Hey nerds, and welcome to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Theories and Conspiracies. I'm Brian from Good Nerd Bad Nerd. So this week was just kind of a sprint the entire episode. So much had to get wrapped up, so much was happening. Obviously the team repairs the obelisk with Flint's help. They get home, presumably. A cliffhanger that's answered in the promo that comes immediately after it isn't really a cliffhanger. But a lot happened. A lot of questions also. So first, Fitz is ruthless. He has got this ruthless side to him now. That trap, the booby trap he sets up for the Kree guard, really, I get the impression it's scared Gemma. But then just a few minutes later, when Flint just launches all those rocks into the Kree area of the lighthouse, and he's like, oh, that was the fiance's idea. They're both up in their game in their kind of deadly death trap brainstorming areas. I don't know. It's just they've both become a little more ruthless, which in this timeline makes sense that they would have to be to survive through everything that they've gone through. So that was an interesting moment. The Seer, we learned who the Seer was, and the Seer is just a time-trapped yo-yo. This was very interesting because this would seem to indicate Fitz was right, that you cannot change the future, that regardless of what happens, this future is set. And Elena Yo-Yo seems to agree with that she remembers that moment. She remembers coming in and finding herself there with no arms and having that conversation. And that's a very eerie thing. And presumably, like the conversation she had the first time she went through it, or the time that Seer Elena went through it, she told herself how to stop this. Don't try and save Coulson. Coulson's sick. Yeah, that was a pretty powerful scene, and as we're seeing these little things relate to us, that the stuff Coulson had on his chest. Sorry, microphone. Yeah, that was a pretty intense scene, which led to Casillas killing her because she was not useful anymore, and he knew exactly where Mac would be, so he could kill her. And then they had that big fight. Yeah, it's just a lot of stuff was going on. Casillas went full crazy this episode. The death of Sonara really just kind of pushed him over the edge. He lost everything, and it was too much for him to handle. Sonara was his ground. It was what grounded him to this world, even when he had nothing. So losing her just was too much, and he became ruthless and just extremely dangerous. And we saw that this episode, and that was great. It was a nice end for his character. It was a nice transition. That drinking whatever that stuff was, the odium or something like that, that was his final, I am sacrificing who I am to ensure the destruction of S.H.I.E.L.D. And that was a nice thing. I did enjoy that. Other things we learned. Enoch is over 32,000 years old. Earth years, by the way. But that's pretty dang old. Would never have guessed that. I would have guessed maybe a few thousand years old, but not 32,000 years old. So that's very interesting and kind of curious to know what all he had, information stored, and if he was sending that information anywhere. I think that's a question I had. He was recording everything and monitoring it, but what was he doing with it? And I'm actually very interested to see if that comes up at any point, because once the team goes back in time, they could just find Enoch again, couldn't they? Yeah, with the team going back in time after Flint rebuilt an obelisk, which was a very cool scene, mind you, and then with Enoch and Deke sacrificing themselves. My question is, what happens to that timeline? What if this is like Fitz believes and time cannot be changed, it's written, it's fixed, then obviously that timeline continues and the Earth is still destroyed. But this being Marvel and the MCU, that's not going to be the case. So is that timeline erased, or is it an alternate reality? You get the impression, based on the moment that Flint has with Tess, that that's now an alternate timeline. That's an alternate reality of some sort. Because if it was erased, it would have been erased right away. The instant they went back in time, it would have been erased. At least, I mean, that's my understanding of how that idea of time travel works, but I could be wrong. But that brings the last two questions. One, what is Coulsons Illness? The two theories I saw out there were, one is he was poisoned somehow by the odium that Ty, the human that was working for Casillas, had, because Coulson did get cut by his knife at that point, so it's possible he got poisoned somehow. The other option that people were kind of speculating with, and I actually like the second one a lot more. The first one makes the most sense because it's a very simple explanation, but the third one that I like more is that it's more related to Ghost Rider and kind of the dark matter or dark energy. People said it looked very similar to what Madame Mask had going on in the Agent Carter show. So those are kind of the two best ideas I've seen so far, and I think both have a bit of merit to them. So I'm curious what you guys think and where you think the show's going with that. But then the last question is, the team obviously gets back to Earth. The promo not spoiled that. I don't think anyone was really concerned about that. Daisy included, even though she's probably going to be very mad at Coulson. But we see this strange group of mercenaries or somebody, and the main woman in charge with the mask. Who do you think she is? Obviously, we have zero information on them, and the costume does not remind me of anyone. So who do you think the villains are for the next season? We know they're going to have to deal with that new general or colonel or whoever it is that was in charge of the military base. But who's this other group? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down below, and don't forget to check out my other theories for Flash and Supergirl. But until next time, I'm Brian from Good Nerd Bad Nerd, and this has been Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Theories and Conspiracies.